This evening I am both honored and humbled with the event we're having today. I've been reflecting a lot today. When we conceived of this event, and Gloria Spitia came to Renee Valdez and I, it was an event meant to acknowledge, complicate, and celebrate the role of Chicanas and Latinas in the Brown Berets. Hence, I believe we call this event Liberación de las Mujeres y los Brown Berets. Through conversations that Gloria and I and Tania Rivera, who's also one of the caretakers, we wanted to create a space where we could come together and just critically reflect about who we are, what we've been, and what we need to know. Because often there is a lot of fascination. But tonight, I found out a few days ago that one of the members of the Brown Berets, Angie Mendez, as she has been introduced to me, I know she's had other names, who was going to be part of this event, that was a hope, has passed on. And I must be honest with you all, these last 3 months have been incredibly difficult. In my own life, and in my family, which is in California, 2 very strong women in my life have passed on. And they passed on quickly. And they were young, like Angie. So I've been reflecting about how we honor ourselves as women, how we honor our mothers, our daughters, our sisters, our comrades, our camaradas, ourselves. Because I think about a wonderful event that I attended years ago, and it was in Black History. And Margaret Burroughs, who is a wonderful artist, was being honored. And my advisor was honoring her, and she told her, stop. This is beginning to sound like a memorial service, and I don't need you to remember me that way. And she went up there and told her story about being a Black woman, about being a teacher, about surviving the Depression, about the South Side of Chicago. And I think about the tribute we had for Raul while he was alive at the MAC. And as well, he kind of grumbled and fumbled, but was honored. But he was honored in his lifetime. And I think about what a gift that is, because I think about the strong women in my family, my 2 tias who have passed. And I hope that they knew that they were honored, that we honor them, that they matter, and that we will honor you in your lifetime and lifetimes forward and lifetimes past in the best ways we know how. There are other folks I'd like to thank. Gloria, because she's just been instrumental. Gloria Spitia, the Austin History Center. Tania Rivera, who helped me today, who helps maintain the space, who always makes sure these doors are open. Jane Rivera, one of our board members, and Gilbert Rivera, who offered much guidance about also conceptualizing these series of events. And they are, in fact, series of events. I'd like to acknowledge Adela and Susana, who, for me, you are my role models. Because I am still often fumbling around and seeking to learn how to balance. And what does it mean to be an activist? What does it mean to have great love for one's people? And how to do that well, and hopefully gracefully, and intelligently, and lovingly, but with power. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have Gloria also share a few words, and then my friends are going to share a few songs. And then we will turn it over to you all. And I will ask you all the first question. How's that? Just to get it started, the first 2 questions. Okay.
Well, I too want to thank everyone for coming. It's been really, this project has been one that actually started back in 2009 when I started to work on projects that I felt needed to be done in order to make sure that we documented. I'm one of those individuals that truly believes that we're not going to put up an exhibit unless the community themselves are very much part of that project. And so it started with the Mexican Americans First, Trailblazers of Boston and Travis County. Then the Voices de Latinas, where we're beginning to hear about, you know, a lot of what the Brown Berets were doing and everything. I come from Victoria and had never heard of the Brown Berets. And never heard of Raul Salinas, and I was a librarian for 26 years in an academic library. So you can see where I'm going here. But I knew that something had to be done. And Gilbert gave me some excellent documents that actually showed me the way to make sure that we were going to go in this direction. So it's been coming. And finally, when we did the MAC, the Mexican American Cultural Arts Center Oral History Project, there, with 40 of those interviews that we did, oral histories, when you have Francis Martinez saying you need to do a program with the Brown Berets, when you have Rowan Salinas, who was talking about how he was a little boy marching along with the Brown Berets and all of that, when you have Vilda Sanchez Ruiz talking about how she and Emma Barrientos marched alongside the Brown Berets while pregnant. And you hear a lot of these individuals that, you know, say, it's necessary, you need to do this. And I am, this really has put a fire under me to make sure that we did it. And I'm very honored to have Paul here because I have not had time or been able to talk with him, but he is one, as Gilbert and Susana and a number of other individuals who really, as I always equated, and as Francis so beautifully put it, had it not been for them, they would not have been able to have had their homes fixed or have done a lot within their community. And these were young people at the time. And they gave a voice to the community in East Austin. They were the ones who spurred this, you know, we're going to be able to do it and we're going to do it. This is not documented in video form at the Austin History Center. This is not documented until we started to work on this project. What you see in this notebook that is being, you know, moved around, we've been able to add more and more documentation on articles regarding the Brown Berets and all that was done. And when people say that, you know, this was a militant group or a group of individuals who, you know, were just looking for trouble, I see it so totally different. I see someone that was really and truly believed in helping their community. And I also see the elders, for the first time, I think what I see, actually listening and saying, yes, you guide us. We can't help ourselves. You guide us, you teach us, you show us. And when they're able to bring all these people together, it's really something else. So we're little by little, we're adding to this, and I'm very glad to be part of this. I'm very glad that I have had individuals that have supported what I am doing as the community archivist for the Mexican American community at the Austin History Center. I'm an academic librarian by trade, sitting behind a desk waiting for faculty to call and say, I need this research, and so I can add it to my book, help me. Or helping students, you know, at the last minute saying, I need to do this paper and it's due tomorrow, and jumping. But now I see that this community needs to be sure that their history is documented and preserved for for the future generations. And I'm just very honored that I'm able to do it, and I hope I'm doing a good job. But thank you.
There's three other people I want to acknowledge. Alan Clove, who graciously has lent us one of the images right there on a moment's notice. And I'd actually like to acknowledge this Naomi and Carlos, who are the ones who will be sharing their música, porque hacemos aquí todo con poesía, música, canto y palabras. Gracias. So, are we all ready? Okay, para final. Thank you all. Thanks for inviting us, Lilia, Tanya, and Mrs. Cynthia. We're going to share, I guess, a song or two tonight in memoria of the past ones tonight that were going to be with us here today. I don't think I ever had the honor to meet, what's her full name? Angie. I don't think I ever had the honor to meet Angie, but the history of Chicanos in Austin was brought to my attention coming from El Paso and going to UT Austin when I joined Mecha, and I think that's what brought me to the space of Resistencia, where I found a lot of mentors who were either took part in community struggles and organizing in the community in different ways, and also intertwined within those movements is the music that we play, which is folk music from Veracruz, Mexico, originally. But Tejanos are over here representing, learning the style as well. So we'll play a few for y'all tonight.
let y'all leave there. You can get the presentation moving.
Yes. That was really great. That's very nice.
It's a good story.
Nomás tengo una pregunta, es muy simple. I just have one question. What inspired you to join the Brown Berets? And how did you decide you wanted to be an activist? So son dos. And they're huge. And what is that? And how did you as women perhaps inspire each other in that organization?
We like who goes first.
We could do it alphabetical, but it depends which part. Which part of the alphabet?
Oh, okay. Well, I always have to give tribute to my parents because when I was a little girl, I learned English real fast. I came from a family of 10. So what happened was that my mom, especially my mom, my dad sometimes, but mostly my mom would take me all over the place. I was 5 years old, and I would be the translator. And my mom, at that time, knew very little English. My dad knew a little bit more English, but he actually never had any formal education, and my mom went to like the 2nd grade. So I was always translating for my mom, and she would take me everywhere, you know. And as I grew up, I learned to edit. Because sometimes things I would translate and I knew like, oh, if I tell my mom that, she's gonna blow up right here, you know. And I'm going like, no, I'm not gonna tell my mom what you just said. I'm just gonna. So I learned to edit. So I always say that that they gave me the skills and that voice to really speak and say things. And my dad, the part that he added is that he always said, Susana, respect everyone. Whatever you do, always respect everyone. And then he always had this thing. He said, I don't care if they're black, brown, white, yellow, or green. And I said, Dad, there's no green people. And he said, just in case they come. And I'd go like, okay. So he was always, you know, teaching me about respect. And that's the kind of person he was. Where I grew up, physically, if you cross the street, that's where the African American community ended. Some people said, those people said that's where it started, and it went that way. And where I live, we say that's where the Mexican community started and went, and other people say, no, that's where it ended. So it depends who you talk to, right? But, so that gave me a lot of insight because I saw very early on that because of your language, the color of your skin, and your income, how people treated you. And, you know, I grew up in that era, you know, the back of the bus. If you went across town, there were certain places you went to, but there was a lot of indignities thrown at you just because you were, and I came from a very poor family. And so, you know, people kind of looked down at poor people, and especially those who spoke Spanish, right? And then I got to see how the African American community was treated. I'll just tell you a quick story. I made friends really quick with the African American community. So one time we went to the Ritz Theater on 6th Street. I think it's Trinity or something. But the African Americans had to go upstairs. But I was with all my African American friends, and the guy says, everybody can go in but her. She can't go in. She has to go in at the bottom. So the Mexicans and the whites could sit at the bottom, but they wouldn't let us go with the blacks. So we all looked and they said, well, let's go, we wait. So we went and they got a handkerchief and tied my hair real quick so none of my hair, because I was really dark, and during the summer I got even darker. So they tied my hair, make sure, and they said, don't say a word, and we'll just crowd you in and you'll get to go in. And we did. So we made it up upstairs to the Ritz. And I got up there, and this is as a young child. I couldn't believe it. It was night and day. Downstairs it was clean, and the chairs and the popcorn was popping and had fresh pickles. And I go upstairs and they had these old raggedy chairs. It was dirty. the popcorn was like probably yesterday's popcorn. The machine wasn't popping, it was just stored there. And the pickles were not crunchy, they were stale. And I said, hey, that's not the way it is downstairs. And they said, what? I said, no, it's not like this at all. And they said, well, how is it? I said, the pickles are crunchy, the popcorn is crunchy, and it's really clean. And then I said, God, this is wrong. This is really wrong, you know. How can they do that, you know? So, you know, very early on, because of my family speaking Spanish and being very poor, I saw how people treated us, but then I also saw how they treated the black people. And I got to see a lot of indignities and a lot of injustice when I was very young. And I experienced a lot of things during my time. And I'll tell you something you probably don't know, maybe a few people know. But I was the first Mexican American to go to an all-black school, which was Keating Junior High. It's way back then. I was the first one to go, you know, and I could tell you that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because they very much inspired me. They included me on the program. I would translate, you know, the prayer and stuff. Nobody treated me bad. The teachers were great, but I also got to witness how loving and caring the African American teachers, because they were all African Americans, how well they took care of the students and inspired them to complete their education, and how they came early and they stayed in the afternoon to work with them. It was entirely different from what I had experienced. And even going to a predominantly Latino school, but we only had one Mexican teacher, which was Miss Reyes, who taught third grade, and everybody prayed, please let me get Mrs. Reyes, you know. That was everybody's prayer, to be in her class, right? So I say that all of those experiences in my life journey, and with my parents teaching me about respect and about the earth, because my mother, she was a gardener, and she was also a healer. You know, she had this big spider web outside, and we couldn't do nothing to the spider because she would use it when we had cuts to heal us and stuff. But she did allow us to, you know, get the ants and feed it. And so we'd throw the ant out there, and we'd watch the big spider come. And so those were things that my mother did. She would heal everything, except if the cut was too bad or something, then we'd go to the emergency room, because we didn't have private doctors or anything like that. But that was the only time. And so she taught me about the gardening and working with the earth, and she would always say, Susana, you got to massage the soil before you plant it and get your hands in there. And I would think, is it because she's trying to get me to work it? Or is it true that this was happening? But when I see the food grow, then I would go like, hey, it's true, you know, what she says, if you take care of the earth, it will give back to you, and those things. But I attribute, you know, all of that to my life experience and my family and growing up. And then when I got into, all along school, but when I got into Austin High School, that's when I did a lot of the organizing, because in Austin High School, we were about like 25% of the population Latino, and about 15% African American was there, and the rest was whites. But I saw a very unfair system there too. The student council was based on popular vote. Of course, you could never win the popular vote. But at that time, in my before that, we would protest the Vietnam War. We decided that we were going to wear black armbands against the war, and it was announced anybody coming to school with a black armband would be thrown out of school and suspended. So we had been organizing, and then a lot of people started stepping back because they thought, I don't want to get thrown out. But then I knew George Roberts' son went to that school, and he said, don't worry, because my dad, he won't let anything happen, you know. And so I went like, okay, but his father's a judge, I don't have to worry, you know. It's like, don't worry. Somebody has a father here who's in high places and stuff. But so we organized against the Vietnam War. When the lettuce boycott came, we organized the students to not eat the lettuce, try to get the school to support Union lettuce there. And sometimes you feel real, like just a few people, you know, you feel like this little renegade there. Not everybody's like up on things that are going on. But then the Chicano walkouts were happening, and so we organized the Chicano walkout in '71 in Austin High. So what happened though, we were going to walk out of the school, and somebody went and told. And so on the day of the walkout, they locked the doors. So we really couldn't walk out. So, but we were real quick, so we went to Plan B. And so we went to the auditorium. We passed the word to go to the auditorium. It was really good because we forced the superintendent to come to Austin High. And out of that struggle, which was a lot of meetings that came out of there, but it was lowering the grade average because you couldn't participate in extracurricular activities or any of that stuff unless you had a certain grade level. And you know, we came from less quality education schools into the west side, and so I can tell you that my friends and I, we were all honor students at Martin Junior High, but when we went to Austin High, our A+ was really a C+. We realized real early on that we had received an inferior education when we got there, so that's why I said we were fighting for lowering that level, also taking away the popular vote to make sure that there was equity and representation across the board and all of that stuff. So we got a lot of rules changed at Austin High. We didn't get to benefit because we were leaving that, we were graduating that year, but we were glad that the next generation of people were going to be able to do that. And so my activism started very young. I always say it started very young, and trying to address a lot of issues just because I think that was my destiny, to really see things as they really were and as they were really happening, but also to be very conscious that no one should have to be treated like that, or there shouldn't be any indignities just because of the color of your skin or the language or how you believe in things, that everyone should be treated as a human being. And so I saw that very early on about what things should be, and trying to address those issues the best way I could. So, and then I had the honor of working at the East First Street Neighborhood Center on East First Street, which is now Cesar Chavez, next door to Mission Funeral Home. That was like the Chicano, Mexicano hub. Everything that happened was there. I mean, you had at that time John Trevino, Joe Ramirez, you had Gonzalo Barrientos, Amalia Rodriguez, everybody, a cowboy, a lot of the people, Lencho Hernandez, you had a lot of the people, they were all there at the First Street Neighborhood Center. And so that was another group of people that took me under their wings and started saying, no, you got to come to this meeting, you got to take the minutes at the advisory group meetings and all of this other stuff. And before I knew it, I was in the La Unida party. They were taking me to San Antonio. And so it was, I always felt that I always had mentors, somebody always helping me along the way to mentor me and show me more of what was really going on and stuff. And so, later on when I met Ernesto Fraga, he said, well, you know, we started the Brown Berets. And so he began to say what the Brown Berets were about. It was about, you know, organizing to better the community. There was a lot of police oppression happening at that time, and so the big issue at that time was a lot of police oppression, but it was everything. And so of course I said, well, sure, I mean, that's what I've been doing anyway, I feel like all my life. And so I thought, wow, that's really great. And so I went to Cristo Rey Church on 2nd Street, inside the church, to do, you know, to meet everyone at 72, 73. So a lot of the people were back there, Paul and Roberto, and a lot of the people were all there at the meetings, along with a lot of other people. I don't think Angie was there yet, or Cristal, but I don't remember them, but I know that there were other people that came later on, as I remember. But it was really working on a lot of issues, and then it was also traveling, because there was a lot of connections of traveling throughout the state and meeting other Brown Beret chapters, and actually getting together to come up with the Brown Beret Manifesto. And for those I don't know if Gloria brought that Brownberry Manifesto, but it's probably still an exhibit. If you get a chance to go to Terrace's library on Cesar Chavez, there's a wonderful exhibit there of a lot of good pictures, but the manifesto, the Brownberry Manifesto that was adopted is there. And it addresses the issues of course, police oppression. It addresses the issue of education, quality education. It addresses the issues of immigration. It addresses the issue of housing. Economic development is also on there, and communications and media. So you look at those issues. Here were the issues that were being identified by a very young generation of people, because I was like in my 20s, like 21, 22, looking at very political issues back then. And I relate to, we just finished the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life report, and it's the same issues, the same thing that we're looking at addressing in there. And I'm not sure, I don't think the manifesto looked at youth leadership, but the Hispanic Latino Quality of Life looks at youth leadership. I think because we're all young, so we didn't think about that. We did programs for youth, but I think it's a whole different time zone. But those are some of the things that that led me to that, and I'll stop there, and I can do more. I don't want to stop Adela, because I could just go on for days.
That was one question.
I think she with 2 questions.
Snuck in 3.
Well, I did not grow up in Austin. I grew up, I was born in West Texas, in the Panhandle. And that is probably one of the most racist places in the whole state, if not in the whole country. And my dad was in agriculture. He was either in farming or ranching. So we moved around to all these little rural places, which were very incredibly racist. We were always a minority. There weren't a whole lot of other, Chicanos, Mexicanos. So racism was wrong. I mean, and it wasn't like, in the playground and plays, like, okay, we couldn't even go across the monkey bars. There's like whites over here, Mexicans over here. Same thing with, places to go eat. I mean, there were signs, no Mexicans here. We would be driving across the state, and there would be signs, we'd fill up with gas, but there were signs that we couldn't use a bathroom. And it was like blatant. And for a kid to see this, I mean, you just don't understand it, and it was hurtful, especially when, it happens to you at school, you don't understand it, you have friends, but you can't play with them, saying, So all these things kind of add up. I left home just as soon as I could, went off to school, came here, and I guess it was the Chicano Studies course that I took that kind of explained everything, and it was like everything that I knew, everything that I experienced, all of a sudden it was like, whoa, this is the root of it, this is what, and it was just like this anger just burst, because I had felt it before, but now I understood it. And at the time, and it was kind of like the last years of Raza Unida. It was, I guess, like mid-70s, maybe late 70s, mid to late 70s. Anyway, so I became part of the UT Raza Unida, and they had a newspaper, Para la Gente. And it was a state, Raza Unida at the time was, at UT was statewide, it wasn't local. Some places it was local, like, in South Texas and different places it was very local. But here it was at the university. But that was my entry. I had never had a model for having a voice, for having a way of speaking out and doing it. This was the first time. And so I was writing for Para la Gente. And we heard about something going on in East Austin. It was the boat races. And so, I went over there to, because I was going to write a story about it. And it was like, this is even, more relevant than what was going on, with Raza Unida at the time. Because it wasn't like the statewide, idea that I had right now. It was like, this was happening. So I got involved with, the whole issue of the boat races. And that gave me a view of the struggle that was going on. It was the boat races then. It was police brutality before that, and then, and during and afterwards. And neighborhood integrity after that. It was rezoning cases, and it was just like one thing after another. And it was, this was an organization that that gave people a voice. It gave people, courage. Gave people the ability to go and voice, what they knew, what they wanted for their own community. And I was a part of that, and it was I did that for several years before I even became part of the Brown Berets. I was part of these other organizations in working with the neighborhood. But going to that first boat race protest gave me the first sight of what people were willing to do to protect and to gain what they needed. And of course that was the first time that I saw the women. I mean, of legendary fame, Berets. She was, I think she was what, 7 months pregnant?
Yeah.
So 7 months pregnant. She was beaten and dragged. And this was in the very public eye. This was, with cameras and people watching. And she was dragged, and she had her baby prematurely. So, this was a very, very powerful experience, and it was where the Berets were part of my journey, because I had been, and I always will be, going somewhere and evolving, with what I'm doing, with what I know, with everything in my life. And this was a very, very powerful time that I experienced this. And knowing how the women balanced this organization, that's what they talk about, balance. They brought, if the Berets were the voice, the heart, and the energy behind the changes, very significant changes in the community, long-lasting changes, because, I know we have a long way to go with police issues. There's still a lot going on, but it's not like it was before, they beat and killed with impunity. And that doesn't happen, and it's because of, this organization, it's because of the leadership of this organization. And that they were able to get people behind it. And so that's how I got started. That's what inspired me, and that's why I was a part of it, and to this day.
Yeah, I just want to kind of piggyback on what she said about the changes, because one of the big issues back then was fighting for community review board. So right now they have the Office of the Police Monitor, and like she said, that's what came out of that long struggle way back then, was really pushing at it. And you can see some of us were in front of the police station, picketing and asking for a community review board.
For days and
Yeah.
weeks and months.
So
Yeah.
here is something, that outcome, and a lot of people don't know that connection or that history, how it took us all of these years and decades to finally get, Office of Police Monitor, and now the commission, where you can go and file complaints and talk about, the police and have the investigation. And so there has been tremendous changes, but it took a lot of sacrificing and beatings and death. And I know that we still have at least one death per year, and it usually happens in the month of June. But it's no way the way it used to be. You couldn't even cross that highway. It was so bad, and I don't know if y'all remember, not too long ago, they had a curfew where our people couldn't even go to downtown. The curfew for teenagers or young people that hasn't been that long when the curfew was there and they couldn't go. But these were all policies to try and make sure you didn't cross the highway. But now that they're on the other side of the highway, of course, those policies don't mean much these days. But it was very, like she said, I can't even tell you the many beatings that I watched of people in the community by the police, and the oppression that was so severe in our community.
With
in
no
Virginia.
consequences,
Yeah.
practically. I mean, like, you know, even if it was very obvious that it had been, you know, that the police had done it, like, you know, like, a black man was strangled, I think it was in front of the police station, you know, he was drunk, he was strangled. Nothing came of that. You know, a young man was shot in the back, running away from police. Nothing came of that. I mean, like today, you can raise your voice, you know, and you can see, you know, you have a voice. You know something can be done. Back then, it just did not happen, and that has been a consequence, I think, of a lot of people's efforts. And the other thing was the rollback zoning that happened from back in the 30s. They had just blanketed zoned East Austin industrial. I mean, just, you know, homes. They just rolled over the whole, you know, community with just industrial zoning, so people couldn't get loans to fix their houses. They couldn't, you know, they couldn't do anything. It was all, and I don't know if that was ever good, because now it's like, it's gone now.
Yes.
Gentrification. But that was another thing. It's like, you know, we knew gentrification was going to hit, and that was, you know, that was something that we kept saying and tried to protect it, but, you know, that ball could not be stopped. But that did happen, the zoning got rolled back, and that was from organizing communities. There were several organizations that I got organized around East Austin. There was East Austin Town Lake Citizens, there was Padre Unido, there was the Gold Valley Association, there was Rainy Street. All those were organizations that the Berets organized and put together, and it was community people. You know, your dad, was one of them. You know, he was one of the leaders. So, you know, all this came from that. And I would actually like to bring it back to, I've mentioned the women and the force of the women in the organization. Every organization needs balance. I think you need someone to, you know, to say when something is not going right. And I would like to bring it back to Angie, because all the women in the organization would not been doing this if that had not been the case. But I have to tell you that, you know, Angie was just as ferocious outside of the organization, confronting people outside of the organization, as she was confronting people within the organization. She, you know, at times was just plain wrong. She did not mince words. She did not care if she, you know, if something was offensive to somebody, it was the truth, and that's the way she spoke. And she would stand, you know, toe to toe with someone if she felt that someone was being unfair, if they were being ruthless, if they were being brutal, or things that she would just call you on. And that was who she was. And it didn't matter, you know, like if it was, like I said, somebody within the organization or somebody that she knew very well, you know, because to her, people's rights and justice were just as important, you know, out there as they were within the family and the community.
And I just want to add to that, because that is a great loss, you know, and sometimes I know that we really have to be talking with one another and documenting these things, because we never know when we're going to leave the earth, right? But Angie came in very young, but yeah, like you said, she wasn't afraid. So she was always speaking out against things and organizing. One of the things we helped organize was during the summer was to do the food for the youth, because one of the things in that era, you know, like when I was young, my parents were always home. My mom never worked. But we were into an era where people could no longer, you know, the mothers couldn't stay home. It was becoming a two-parent household. People were having to work. But we saw that the kids were hanging out. There was a swimming pool and stuff, and they weren't eating because no one was there. So with Angie and Cristal, and some of the other women that were there, we put together a summer program where we would cook for the kids, and we'd be there rolling tortillas, making it the old-fashioned way, fideo, frijoles, really good stuff, you know. And all the kids would come over and we'd just start feeding them, so they would know like every day they could come over to the Centro Chicano and there would be food, because we worked that kitchen, working with the youth and making sure that they were set. And that was one of the things that, you know, Angie was always there and working. And later on, just like I left the Brown Beret, well, the Brown Beret movement kind of fizzled out. But we later on, we became comadres to danza, because Angie joined the concheros, the danzantes. And so we got into a really, a field and going to a real spiritual field. A lot of us did. We went from that to recognizing our indigenous roots and going back to learning the indigenous danzas and stuff, the things that we also had gotten separated from. So Angie and I were comadres in the danza de Conchero. And she was real powerful. She was one of the Malinches who carried the Salvador. And that's the last, how I remember Angie as a danzante, being a danzante, and you sort of like, you go on a different path. You lay the beret down and you put on the penacho, and you just, but you keep on going. And that's how I remember Angie, and it's going to be a loss, because I wish that we had, you know, we were trying to get her here on the panel to talk, and we wanted her to be able to record her and everything, and I guess it wasn't meant to be in that time, in that particular place. But I also want to recognize another woman that's here, is Alicia, who is in the Brown Berets. She's back here too. So, you know, maybe you can come over here, because we want to make sure that, you know, we'd like to have you answer that same question.
No.
You know,
I just
you're
want
not going to give
No,
away.
I just wanted to say
No,
something
no,
about
no.
Angie.
Yeah,
because,
but both things too. Now sit down.
Yeah.
This is chair
Well,
here.
my role is the one, the wife of
Okay.
a Brown Beret, and I have a daughter that's you know, her father was a Brown Beret. You want to know about me? I just wanted to share something about Angie. Angie and I met back in the early 70s, and she was a beret. I met Susana during that time, and it was because of Adela I met my husband at Brown Beret, because she joined us together with a date. Anyway, it was her fault. Anyway, so at that time I started getting involved, and then with the women, the wives of the Brown Berets, and Angie was one of them that always would support us, because you had women that were berets that they weren't married, and then you had the men berets that were married, and the women were us that were married to them, that we were part of a lot of the stuff. We did a lot of cooking, and we did a lot of taking care of the kids and raising them, and only when there was a big issue regarding that we had to go to protests, or we take all the family, and then we make sure that everybody got fed and this and that. So that was our role as the wife. And then plus, Angie started looking at it that we need to do more than that. So she kept saying, "You're smart, you can," you know. So she started getting us involved in more issues about women and how to organize, and she inspired me a lot. And then also Paul and Gilbert have also inspired me a lot in being an activist as I am now. I consider myself still involved in my community. I've raised my children. I have 7 children. I have 24 grandchildren, and I am teaching them what it is to live in a community where there was a lot of racism, you know, and how to support your neighbors and get involved, you know, and if you get involved at this early age, because you know I was involved a lot. I learned a lot from also my parents, who were migrant workers. I was born in East Charleston, raised there, and so I'm teaching that to my grandchildren and my children. My children would always go with me to protest and take. Now they have their own children, right? So I tell them, well, why don't y'all come and help me go do door-to-door walking and go notify that there's a meeting for the neighborhood. They go, no, Momo, we visit Momo and my mom. Don't do that no more to us. You know, to me that, because I remember you always would drag us over there. You know, as I get older, and my other new grandchildren are coming, I tell them, I said, look, I have also step-grandchildren, and I told them that, you know, this is what I usually like to teach my grandchildren. Is that they teach their families as they grow up and you know, help each other and fight for your rights and what your beliefs are. And we're all equal here, you know, and no matter what color you are, you know, we're still a human being and we need to all work together. And I guess, you know, we've seen too much racism as we grew up. You know, what she said, I went through. What she said, I went through. And, you know, we lived in different barrios, you know, but we still went through the same thing. And I guess that's why we're activists. But I do honor, and, you know, I hadn't seen Angie for a while, and Angie made sure that a lot of us women, you know, went back to school and went back to work and get good jobs. And because of her, I did get a good job. I used to work for Health and Human Services, and she really advocated for me to get involved and go back to school, and I started going to school. And that's what I wanted to say about her. Not really much about me, but her, you know, I've always honored her. And I felt, when I just found out today that had happened to her.
For documentation purposes, can you state your maiden name and your married name?
Ellsa Rendon Montoya. At that time, I was delgado. He's right, so. I keep reminding you, huh? Yeah, it's your fault.
Okay, no se vayan. Because I wanted to continue the conversation or open up to any questions, pero quería invitar a Naomi y Carlos que canten otra vez. ¿Estás okay? Que ocupan agua. ¿Es okay? Agua? Nada? Okay. Okay. And for everyone else, there are snacks back here, so please. Gloria made sure that we had lots and lots of snacks. We told her lots of fruta.
Good.
Like 1,000 ways. And then every pueblo is
It's all by
different.
ear, so they have to see it with each other. We're like, no, that's all.
Can I ask my daughter to say something? She wanted to say something about Angie.
I can Today is an emotional day for me, but yet a happy day because it's so happy to see everybody here to come together. So I'm a little emotional right now. I grew up being around all of the people that had just spoken and Paul Hernandez. And my father, Martin Delgado, was a brown beret. And when I grew up to understand why my nickname was Tatana, I didn't understand that. So I came to my mom and I said, Mom, why did everybody calling me Tatana? She's like, well, because before you could talk, you couldn't say Chicana. So we named you Tatana. So then I started to go back and look at the pictures when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. And I'm like this, and I'm like this. And I just have panties, no shirt on. And I'm like this. And the whole family knew me as Tatana. So it's such a wonderful experience and an honor to see these women and to see Angie's legacy still live on, because these women not just inspired me to who I am today, and Paul Hernandez inspired me as well, because my dad left Austin. He went to San Antonio and he began a new journey and a new life, and he's still involved in politics but in a different way. And it made me always want to bring this out one day, and it's happened today. So, I'm sorry, I'm very honored to be here and also celebrate her life, because about 10 years ago I ran into her and she told me, Mija, I went back to school. I went to college and I went to UT and I got a degree and you can do it. And that's inspired me to go back to school. I'm not at UT yet, I'm at ACC, but one day I hope to be there. And so I'm sad that she's gone, because I just found out today from Mr. Rene Renteria. So it's a sad day, but yet a happy day, because we get to sit here and talk about her memories and her inspiration and her courage to stand up. And Paul taught me that. You know, one day he was at AISD protesting and he said, Mija, come talk. And I was timid and I was scared, but he was up there in front of people and news media, and I was just holding a sign. I was behind the sign always, you know, from Pan Am, from the hillside to Chicano Park to wherever. I was always holding a sign. But now I can talk and I can speak and how I feel and what my family, because Susana, Paul Hernandez, the Brown Berets, they're my family. They instilled that in me as a little girl. And now that I'm 34 years old and still live in East Austin, and I can still watch so much that has changed and so much that has happened. I just want their stories to live on, and other people can just read about it and just feel what I felt as a little girl seeing all of this change. So I'm happy to be here, and I just wanted to share that with all of y'all.
Did you get her name? See what it is?
Oh, yeah.
It's Bertha Marie Delgado.
Thank you.
Daughter of Martin Delgado and Ellsa Rendon.
And I would like to talk to you later.
Thank you.
I wanted to invite anybody to share any recuerdo or to, if you'd like to ask. Mujeres tan estudiantes, any questions? If that's okay with you all. But really, it's open. So, lo que sienten en su corazón.
I work with Angie, and I worked at the East Berets Neighborhood Center. She used to be the advisory board, and I would also like assistant director there. So they made me say minutes of meetings, monthly meetings that we had. And Angie was one of the most outspoken, nicest persons that were on the board. I just wanted to say that she was really a great woman. That's all I'll say. Oh, by the way, before I I was the director there, assistant director. I was also a drum for 2 years. 1972 to 1973. That's my testimony.
I would like to say that tonight we are dedicating this program on her behalf, Angie, but also the rest of the programs that we are scheduled to have during October. So you will be seeing her image every time that we do the programs. We will be taking the photograph and the memory book also.
I'd like to say una cosa de Angie. She was the most courageous young woman that I had met for that time. She was from the projects. She was tough. She could handle it. So I just came here to honor Angie, to honor her memory, and to honor her legacy.
I also want to honor Angie, and what I want to talk about a little bit is that Rainy Street. She was married to Elias Mendez, and the Mendez family lived on Rainy Street on the corner of Rainy and Driscoll, the blue house. That luster pearl, that is the Mendez house. It is not a bar. It is a place where human beings lived and fought and struggled for their neighborhood. And the Mendez family lived there. Angie was part of that family. And the struggle for Rainy Street is a struggle that continues today. We were able to fight very hard to save Rainy Street for many years from destruction. If we had not been there fighting for Rainy Street, today you wouldn't even know that it was a neighborhood of Chicanos at one time. And the Mendez family lived there for many, many years. Mr. Martinez lived there for many, many years. Many of our contemporaries lived there and are now gone. And some of them have passed away, some of them have moved. And the city of Austin continues its legacy of allowing gentrification to happen. We have fought hard. There's a book going around that's really, really good, talked about a lot of the history of the neighborhood. And back in 1970, 1971, 72, we were talking about gentrification. We were talking about the houses being destroyed. The houses were being bulldozed down. And that continues to happen today. Rainy Street is but one of the neighborhoods that has pretty much completely been destroyed. We've been trying to save some of the houses. I was at a meeting not too long ago and said we need to protect these houses at a city department, the planning department. And one of the historians for the city said, he basically said, Mr. Rivera, you don't expect us to have a house, a little bungalow like the ones that are on Rainy Street, on such expensive property. That property is worth $500,000. You don't expect us to allow those houses to continue to be there. And so they've moved almost all of the houses out, and they're building gigantic condominiums. Mr. Pete Martinez in 1983, when we were in front of the Juárez Lincoln building, as it was being bulldozed, said that he was being moved out. He said, I've been moved out 3 times from what was in Little Mexico. Was known as Little Mexico, which is the park
West downtown.
West Second Street, where all the condominiums
Water
are.
Creek.
Yeah, and so he'd been moved 3 times, and he said, I'm old, I'm sick, I don't know what I'm going to do if I have to move one more time. Well, not too long after he had to move, he passed away. But he said at that time, very prolific, he says, they want to build condominiums here. They want to tear down our houses. That was in 1983. And it's happening today. They've crossed Interstate 35. They're building hotels now east of Interstate 35. So the legacy that Angie left us is one of struggle, of one of perseverance, of one of a powerful woman. And I will always remember her standing up to the police. And there's, I'm not sure if it's her or not, but if it's not, I apologize, but there's a video that's going to be shown at the terrazas later this month, where Paul and a lot of other people are getting beat up, and there's a woman being held by the police, and as she's being pushed back, she's kicking a cop. And
That's Crystal.
That's Crystal. Okay, that's Crystal. Crystal being her sister-in-law. So blood runs real close in that family. So the bloodline runs real close. But Crystal is another powerful woman that was a part of the parades. So I also was very shocked and very upset and emotional when I heard that Angie had passed away, because she was a woman that you could turn to whenever you needed help. She was there to help you. When I was videoing the destruction of the mural, she came up and grabbed the camera. She grabbed the mic. She would do whatever she needed to do for the struggle. And so she was always ready to lend a hand. And I hope that when we leave here, that everybody here remembers, and all of us, a lot of us that are here, I won't say las manitas. Las manitas, and I say that with a lot of love. Remember her also, and she was always there. And I hope that when you leave here, you remember one thing: that put your hand out and help somebody, because that is the most powerful thing you can do as a human being, is to help another human being. And Angie taught me that you must give of yourself in order to get some good back.
As some of you know, my name's Anita Quintanilla, and some of you know that I grew up on Rainy Street. My family was on Rainy Street from the 40s till the 80s, when we were cheated out of our property at 51 Rainy Street. And my father was a living legend there on East 6th Street with his little insurance office from the 50s till a few years ago. And my beginnings of activism was in the early 70s at UT, when we were working with the brown berets. So the Mujeres, I wish I could remember them clearly. Hopefully I'll see some photos. Maybe I'll be in there. But, you know, to refresh my memory of what was going on in the early 70s with the Mayo organization at UT and the brown berets, I would love to see some photos. Now I'm going to go to Ellsa Library and check them out.
Well, I just want to add my tribute of love to Angie, but anybody who knew her never wanted to come up against her.
Oh, no.
That's very serious, and she was very fierce and had an indomitable spirit. But the whole thing, I think, is really, the point is that she did come from the project. I worked with her mom. I had Es Libre in my kitchen, and that whole dream that one has for your family and to push them ahead. She was very good. I can hear them screaming and yelling and crying at the same time when she probably arrived, because Marcia came out running, you know, and they're all dancing up there already. But she was quite the person, and she had that core indomitable spirit of having to have persevered through everything that she did. And so she never lost that rough edge, and it served her well in terms of survival. But to have been able to go back to UT, to get that master's in psychology, to be able to work within the bureaucratic system of the healthcare system, because we would get together sometimes and, you know, we just couldn't believe some of the things that they had to go through and stuff. But the idea is that she's very, I feel like that she's very present here today just by the fact that she's not here, and she got that whole thing that she and Marcia always used to say, yeah, pero ustedes se van a poner viejas y nosotros qué. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, we're very fortunate to have had her in our lives, for the good and the bad. And the thing is, I think that's what we want to think about, in the fact that these people, no matter what the struggle of Susana's mother or Adela's family, and that they were able to that time away to be able to help other people and to struggle no matter how hard the current was. And it was damn difficult.
And I just real quickly want to touch on, because when Adela talked about, that whole struggle with the boat races and everything, and being, the zoning and the land issue. And yes, we were able to get a lot of concessions because we stopped that gentrification at that point. I had friends who lived with a Holiday Inn and stuff when I was little, all on Rainy Street. Those were all houses and stuff that were down there. But I can tell you, today we had a protest. And I'm going to pass these out, and for those who don't, I didn't bring it out, I thought I brought it in the pack. But right now we're up against a real big ordinance called the Urban Farm Ordinance. And I know that this sounds real nice, and people say, how can you be fighting an urban farm ordinance? Well, because this ordinance is going to blanket zone. When Adela talked about blanket zoning, industrial, well, we worked hard to change that industrial. In the Go Valley Johnston area, we made history. Went all the way up to the federal government and they wrote the story, because we had rezoned over 600 properties that were zoned industrial and commercial, and homes that were zoned that, and rolled those back. And now we have the farmers coming in, and the new ordinance is supposed to go up. They want to blanket zone all of East Austin commercial. So all the single family homes, they will now be able to turn into farms. And not only turn into farms, they will be able to sell, which is a commercial use. Right. And they're going to be allowed to slaughter chickens and rabbits and other things on single family land, and then let those parts decay there on part, which they call composting, but raw animal parts. That's what was happening when this thing broke out, was that they were composting chicken parts, and she was slaughtering 20 to 50 chickens a week. And for those who know about farming, if you're going to be slaughtering that many chickens each week, you better have about 200 or 300 chickens on site. Because you're going to slaughter 100 chickens a month, you're going to have a lot of chickens. I know, because we grew up with chickens. So, but we weren't selling them. We weren't commercializing, right? We were for our own, and that was very rare that we killed our chickens. Our chickens were really for our eggs. It was a very special occasions only that we were allowed to kill the chickens. But they want to do this from all of it. The other thing is that this ordinance is going to allow them to do indoor and outdoor entertainment without no regulations. Everybody has to get permits and everything else, and you can only do so many events. That's not going to be for the farmers. And they can do it without parking regulations, amplified sound regulations. Then they have food mover units there where they're selling plates $65 a plate on the weekend. And they're making all of this money. But they're a commercial use, and they have self-identified themselves as a business. But now they want to come into East Austin because, that's why I say for over 500 years, we're constantly being displaced whenever they find gold or special minerals, or we're too close to the water, whatever the issue is. Well, now the new gold is black prairie soil. That's what's in the Go Valley Johnston area. And they say, well, this is the only place we can farm. And I say, I don't know about that, because I've traveled throughout the world, and you can farm just on anywhere. People farm in the water, farm on the rocks, they farm on the hills, all kinds of things. They farm. So that doesn't hold water with me. But what is happening is when you begin to commercialize all single-family homes, I can assure you the next step that's going to come in is CSMU, commercial service mixed use. And they say, well, Susana, there's only a few farms. I said, well, when they blanket zone Cesar Chavez, that was the first fight we had with the Cesar Chavez neighborhood plan. You said, oh, don't worry, it's just, I said, well, it's already mixed use. You have retail, you have homes, you have the beauty shop. It's already mixed use. Just give them the correct zoning. And they said, no, we're going to blanket zone. And we said, well, what's going to happen is the first people to go are going to be the renters, because they're going to rent more on commercial use. The second people who are going to go are the owners, because they're not going to be able to pay the property taxes. And before you know, no one will be living on Cesar Chavez. And that's just about true today. Well, about 4 years after the Cesar Chavez plan got adopted, Ken Butler and Liz Mueller from UT did a land use study in the Cesar Chavez, because they didn't believe what we were saying, but they had to verify, because data always has to be verified. And it showed that the land value had gone from 200 to 400% in just those few years in Cecil County. And I said, that's an example of what's going to happen to Gold Valley Johnston. If you open that flood door and you let them sell and slaughter chickens and compost and rabbits all on single family land and allow that to become a commercial use, that is what's going to happen to all of East Austin. And I said, this is a land grab that's happening. I don't know how else to tell you all, but it is a land grab that's happening, and that the city has to do something to work on policies, to look at policies to mitigate gentrification, to mitigate what's happening in East Austin. Because you can't talk about sustainability if you're not being able to sustain the people who have been there for generations and the people who were forced to come to East Austin. Because we all know the 1928 master plan, which we call Yes Master, it relocated all of us to East Austin. And now, you know, if you don't know, in the 2012 report that came out, 78702 was the second most gentrified city in the entire United States. That should tell you what's happening to our body. And it's like a domino thing, and they're now up to Gold Valley Johnston, and it's the next big fight. So please, those that got the, all I'm asking you, you all have iPhones and cell phones. All I ask you, do exactly what I have on that paper. Get to the website, ask them to postpone this public hearing, which is set for October the 17th. That's all I ask you, postpone it to get an independent body to review this. Because you know who they gave this ordinance to review and come up with? They gave it to the Sustainable Food Policies Board, whose mission is to promote farming and selling of products. And then it's supposed to also feed a need. So it's like when we always fought the police. Why do you get the police to investigate the police? You know, it's not gonna happen. So here they give it to the Sustainable Policy Board, and instead of working with us to, you know, mitigate or address the issues, they went crazy. They said, here, we're getting to look at it, let's just zone out of East Austin, commercial service, mixed use. So this is an issue that Adela brought up about the land use and zoning. It's just another thing that's happening to our community, and it takes people who are involved and educated, compassionate, and understanding to realize, because a lot of our grassroots people, they're just surviving day to day. They don't even know what's coming. You know, they're just working jobs and raising their family. They have no idea about this ordinance. They have no idea about what's about to happen. And so we really do need y'all support. We need everybody to really, you know, let the city council know, because the other side, they're very well organized and they have a lot of resources, and we don't, you know. Well, that is a poverty organization. It always has been. It's never been our goal to be anything but that, but to work with the community and do what we have to do. So I just ask y'all that the land struggle is not over, and that everybody take a role in that land struggle, so that we can sustain the people who are still there.
I'd like to share a story. My name is Tanya Rivera, the daughter of Gilbert Rivera and the goddaughter of Paul Candace. And I remember Angie being a warrior. I remember like you didn't want to piss her off, right? And I grew up with her two sons. And I can remember we went to Alma de Mujer, and Marcia was there, Angie was there, all kinds of people were there, but we were doing workshops. And I remember when one of the workshops, they were asking all these questions like, you know, where do you come from, and how do you identify yourself? And I remember after we had these conversations, the adults would acknowledge what the kids were saying, because it was a youth retreat, and it was just women, and they were acknowledging our voices, and I remember that. And then later on, like the next day or that night, it was like the winter and it was really cold, and there was a sweat that was going to happen, and Marcia and Angie and Patty Salas, they asked all the mujeres, all the young girls, if they wanted to participate participate in this sweat. And nobody wanted to because they were all going to get naked and they were going to go in there and they were going to pray. But I said yes. And I remember I was only like 12 years old. You know, I was, you know, pubescent. And they told me it was okay. Like, it's okay, your body. They're like, I remember them telling me like that don't be ashamed of your body. We're all women here. And so, and I remember just going inside the sweat lodge and praying and having that experience, that spiritual experience, feeling the earth being cold, but then you could feel the steam coming up from the rocks. And I just remember her encouraging me in my prayer, and what I had to say was important. So that's all I want to say.
¿Nadie más tiene recuerdo? ¿Anyone else have
Un recuerdo, can't say memory. It doesn't sound the same. Remembrance. You know, I just invite you all to get reacquainted, we acknowledge each other. Buy a book. Buy a book. Porque Resistencia sobrevive because all of you make it happen every time you all are here.
And I would also like to say that there are schedules for the rest of the programs also, and I do invite y'all to attend. As Gilbert said, the next one is going to be at the Terrazas branch on Wednesday. And it is going to be 3 documentaries. One, it will be Boats in the Barrio. The other one will be the day that the cake, right. And then also another one will be with young documentarian Andrea Zerata, that will be a documentary on Susana Almanza. So attend that if you can. And then also on the 19th, Saturday, next Saturday, will be another 3 panelists, Gilbert, Pio Renteria, and Susana, along with also the keynote speaker, Dr. David Montejano. And there will be time for question and answers after that. So I ask you, please, put that on your schedule and make every effort to attend, because I think it's going to, these next 2 programs I know are going to be very informative.
If you have your parents, if you have your grandparents, if you have your aunts and your uncles, this is the time to go back and get your history, your immediate family history, because as these things get lost and they wind up in Goodwill, the other people who pick it up have no idea what they're touching. You know what I mean? And the thing is, it serves you better than anybody else first. And then secondly, it'll serve the people who come behind you. And the thing is that they're now working on 2 levels to try to get even the national parks, because we have 3% of all history is related to Latinos. The other thing is the next land grant. I was talking to Angela today, and it's going to be the SB2, which is this, for $1, charter schools can come in and buy land from Austin or anywhere else in the state of Texas. And they're going to, that whole charter school movement, think about this. Only your families paid property taxes, sales taxes, and every kind of other taxes, because you probably didn't have a CPA to guide your grandmother and your grandfather through everything they have paid. You have built the public school system twice over, and you still can't be able to get good education, because you're such a threat, because your raíces are so profundas, because your cultural education is such a threat. I told Marta the other day, I said, yeah, when I used to come to the city council to speak, I always wanted to come and say, my name is Cynthia Perez and I want to eat you. I'm going to take over and control the world. Me and all my relatives come over and after lunch when we have time. You know what I mean? Because it's so ridiculous, because you're so powerful and it's so painful that they're so afraid of you, because they're going to have to share $1 with you. And they can't. You know? And And so I just want to encourage each and every one of you to go and look up your relatives and get that information now, because you can do it better than anybody else. Because you know, and you know what it feels like. You know, and that's such a powerful thing. And then the family comes and all of a sudden they're overcome with grief and everything goes out the door. And you're like going, so.